B'siyata d'shmaya Masechet Megillah Daf Vov. We're going to start on the last line of Daf Yomi Shiur. The previous Gemara we learnt made mention of the pasuk in Yeshua that says Va'orei mivtzor hatzidim tzeir v'chamas rakas v'kineres. And the Gemara assumed that rakas was Tveria. The Gemara is going to discuss this pasuk a bit more now. Omer Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan ki havet talya, when I was younger, amina milsa de she'ilna l'sabya. I said something, and then I asked the sages about it. V'shtakach kavosi, and they said the same as I had said. And this is what I said. Chamas, the place Chamas mentioned in the pasuk, zu Tveria, is the city of Tveria. V'lama nikra shmo Chamas. Why is it called Chamas? Al shum chami Tveria, because Chamas has the root of cham, which is hot, and we know that there are springs in Tveria from which hot water flows. Rakas, when the pasuk mentions Rakas, zu Tzipori, it's a place called Tzipori. V'lama nikra shmo Rakas. Why was Tzipori called Rakas in the pasuk? Mishum de midalya, because it's high up. Karakso denaro, like the banks of a river, which are always higher than the river. Kineres, when the pasuk mentions Kineres, zu Ginoisar, it's a city called Ginoisar. V'lama nikra shmo Kineres. Why does the pasuk call Ginoisar by the name of Kineres? The mesiki peiro kekolo de kinori. The fruits that grow there are sweet like the sound of a kinor, which is a musical instrument. In the place Kineres, the fruits were very sweet. Rabbi is now going to question Rabbi Yochanan regarding Rekes being Tzipori. Omar Rabbi, mi'ika lemanda Omar, can it be that somebody assumes that Rakas lav Tverihi, that Rakas is not Tveria? V'hakich shochiv inish hacha, when somebody is nifta, passes away here in Bovel, Hosam, then there in Tveria, softi lehachi, this is how they say a hesped about him. Godoil hu b'sheishach. He was great in Bovel called Sheishach. V'shem loy berakas. And his name was famous even in Rakas in Eretz Yisrael. V'chimaski aroin lahosam. And when the nifta itself, the aroin, the mace, is brought from Bovel to be buried in Tveria, then in Tveria, softi lehachi, this is how they would say a hesped. Oyhave Sridim. The people called Sridim, who were Oyhave Yisrael, Yoishvei Rakas, those who are sitting in this place called Rakas, T'u v'kablu harugei Emek, come out and greet those who have died in Bovel, called Emek, because Bovel is a very low place, geographically. Kinoch nafshed Reb Zera, when Reb Zera was nifta, Posach alei ahu sapdono, the one who was giving the hesped, started as follows. Eretz Shinor, Bovel that's called Eretz Shinor, Hora v'yolda, gave birth to Reb Zera. Eretz Tzvi, and Eretz Yisrael called Eretz Tzvi, Gidlo Sha'ashuah, is the one that was Megadil, the Sha'ashuim of Bovel, which was Reb Zera, since he came to Eretz Yisrael. Oy no lo, Omro Rakas, woe to the place called Rakas, Ki ibdo kli chemdosa, who has lost a kli chemda. And we know that all this took place in Tveria. So you see that Tveria is constantly being referred to as Rakas. Elo Omar Rav is going to explain that pasuk in Yeshua differently. Chamas, zu chamei gror. When the pasuk mentions Chamas, it's referring to a place called Gror, and was called that way because of the hot fountains in Gror. Rakas zu Tveria. Rakas is Tveria. Kineres zu Ginoisar. And Kineres is Ginoisar. V'lama nikra shmo Rakas. Why was Tveria called Rakas? Shafilu reikonim shebo. Even the people that seem to be empty, meleim mitzvahs karimoin. They are full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate is full of seeds. Rabbi Yirmiyah Omar. Rabbi Yirmiyah says Rakas Shema. The real name of the town is actually Rakas. Just V'lama nikra shmo Tveria. Why did people call it Tveria? Sheyusheves b'tiburo shel Eretz Yisrael, because it's sitting in the center of Eretz Yisrael. And the Sefer Kafter Vaferach and Perikut Aleph explains that Tveria and Akko are on the same horizontal plane, and the distance from Akko to Roi Shahar, which is the northern border of Eretz Yisrael, and from Akko down to Nachal Mitzrayim, which is the southern border of Eretz Yisrael, the distance is equal. Rabbi Omar, Rabbi maintains, Rakas Shmo, his name is Rakas, V'lama nikra Shmo Tveria, and why was the place called Tveria? Shetoivo re'iyasa. It's very pleasing to the eye. Now the Gemara is going to explain the intention of different places mentioned in another pasuk. Omar Zeira. Zeira said as follows: Kitroin, when Kitroin is mentioned, Zu Tzipori. It's the place called Tzipori. Velama Nikra Shma Tzipori. Why was the place called Tzipori? Sheisheves B'roish Hahar. Since it is positioned on the top of a mountain, Ketzipor, like a bird who regularly sits on a high place. Asks the Gemara, V'Kitroin Tzipori? Can Kitroin really be Tzipori? V'Kitroin b'chelkei shel Zvulun havoi. We know that Kitroin was in the Chelek of Eretz Yisrael belonging to Zvulun. It says in the Pasuk in Shoftim, in Navi, Zvulun lo yehoirish es yoshvei Kitroin ve'es yoshvei Nahaloil. That Zvulun did not expel the people that were living formerly in Kitroin, and this was contrary to what they were supposed to do. The Pasuk says that they were supposed to expel the people that were living in Eretz Yisrael. And we know that Tzipori was not in the Chelek of Zvulun, since Zvulun Misraim al Midoisov Hava. Zvulun actually complained that he was not happy with the place that the Geiral was Kevea. Shenemar, like it says in the Pasuk, Zvulun am Chereif Nafshoi Lomus, and the Hemshech HaPasuk is V'naftali al Meroimei Sodeh. And we read the Pasuk as follows: Ma Tam, what's the reason that Zvulun let himself be killed in war? Mishum de Naftali al Meroimei Sodeh, because he saw that Naftali's Chelek was full of fields, and he was jealous of him. And his complaint was as follows: Omar Zvulun lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Zvulun said to Hashem, Ribono shel Olam, La'achai, to my brothers, Nosato lahem, Sodei Sukromenim, you gave them fields, vines, V'li nosato horim ugvois, and to me you gave mountains and valleys. La'achai, to my brethren, Nosato lahem arotzos, you gave them portions in Eretz Yisrael, which are on dry land. V'li nosato yamim u'nahoros, and to me you gave seas and rivers. Omar loi, Hashem answered him, Kulon tzrichim lecha, they all need you. Al yedei chilazon, the chilazon used for the mitzvah of tzitzis, which the whole of Klal Yisrael pride themselves in wearing. One of the strings have to be painted tcheles, which is taken from the blood of the chilazon, and the chilazon is found in your chelek, coming from the waters. Shenemar, like it says in the Pasuk, Usfunei Temunei Chol, that all the Shvatim would collect themselves in the mountains in the Chelek of Zvulun in order to buy from him the Temunei Chol, the Chilazin. Like we're going to see, Tanya Rav Yosi learnt in a Brisa that Sfunei ze Chilazin. The Chilazin is actually called and referred to in the Pasuk as Sfunei. The word Sofun is a Lashon of Chashivos. Tmunei. Why is it called Tmunei? Zetris. It's a type of big fish called tris. Chol. What is chol? Zuz chuchis levana. A special, expensive type of glass. These are the three things that Zvulun had that no one else had, and they're all very choshev. He had Sfunei, he had Tmunei, and he had Chol. Omar Lefonov. So Zvulun answered back to Hashem, Ribono shel Olam, mi moidi'eni. Who's going to make me aware when people come into my chelek to steal these precious items? That's how Rashi explains it. Omar Loi, answers Hashem, Shom yizbechu zivchei tzedek. The Pasuk compares buying the Sfunei, Tmunei Chol from Zvulun to bringing a korban. And in the same way as it's also to bring a korban from Gezel, so too nobody is going to steal from you. And Hashem said to him, Siman zeh yehei lecha, I'm giving you a siman. Kol hanoitel mimcha, anyone who steals from you. A chilazoin, or that sand from which that special glass is made, beloy domim, even just a pruta's worth without paying for it, einoi moil beprakmatya, sheloi klum. He will not gain anything. The color won't come out right, the glass won't come out right, he'll gain nothing from it. Now the Gemara is finishing the question, v'yisal kedaitach, if you're going to say, kitroin zet tzipori, that kitroin is tzipori, amai misraim al midoisov. Why was Zvulun complaining that he didn't have fields and vines in his chelek? V'havya tzipori, he had the place called tzipori, milsa da'adifa tuva, which is a place which is worth much more than the fields and vines. That's the question of the Gemara. The Chitema suggests the Gemara that even though Tzipori was in the Chelek of Zvulun, nonetheless he complained. De lesbo zovas cholav udvash. The Pasuk says that one of the virtues of Eretz Yisrael was that it was a place which was Eretz zovas cholav udvash. The goats would eat the figs and the honey of the te'enim, and the milk of the goats would flow like a stream. And that he didn't have. V'omer Shlokish, you can't say that, because Shlokish said, L'didi chozili, I saw zovas cholov udvosh to tzipori. I saw zovas cholov udvosh. I saw the milk and honey flowing in tzipori. V'havi al shisha oso mil al shisha oso mil. And the area where the Chol of Dvash flowed was 16 mil by 16 mil. V'chitema, that even though Tzipori was in the Chelik of Zvulun and he had Zovas Chol of Dvash, nonetheless he complained, D'loi nefisha didei keda'achwa. He didn't have as much Zovas Chol of Dvash as the rest of his brothers did, the rest of the Shvatim. V'omer Rabbi bar bar Chana, Omer Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi bar bar Chana said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, L'didi chazili, I saw Zovas Chol of Dvash T'chol Eretz Yisrael. I saw the milk and honey that was flowing in the whole of Eretz Yisrael, and if you'd combine them all together, v'havya kami beikubei ad akrod de tulbakni. It would fill the space as the distance between a place called Beikubi until a place called Tulbakni on the other side of the Yarden, which is Esrim Utartin Parasi Urka, 22 parasois in length, Upusya Shito Parasei, and 6 parasois wide, which is 132 square parasois. Now Tzipuri, we said before, was 16 mil by 16 mil. There's 4 mil in a parasa, which means that Tzipuri had 4 parasois by 4 parasois, which is approximately an eighth of the amount of Zovas Chol of Dvash of the whole of Eretz Yisrael. And Zvulun was only one of the 12 Shvatim, so he got more than his share in Eretz Yisrael of Zovas Chol of Dvash. So what was he complaining about? Answers the Gemara, Afilu hachi sodois ukromim adifale. He complained because at the end of the day he did not have as many fields and vines as his brethren. Daikanami, I'll bring you proof to this. Tichsiv, as it says in the pasuk, v'naftali al meroimei soda. He was complaining and jealous about the fact that he did not have as many fields. Shma mina, and that's a proof to what we said. Now the Gemara is going to move and explain the place called Akroin in the pasuk in Tzfanya. Omar Rebavo, says Rebavo, ve'ekroin te'oker. The pasuk in Tzfanya says that Ekroin would become uprooted. What is Ekroin? Zu Kesari. This is a place called Kesari. Bas Edom, the people of Edom live there. Shehi yesheves bein hacholos. And this place is surrounded by sand, and since it's built on the edge of the sea. V'yi hoisa yoseid tkua liYisrael b'yemei avonim. And they contributed negatively against Klal Yisrael in the time of the Greeks. In the same way as a yoseid, a pin is very strongly pinned into the ground, so too they were very firm about their commitment to hurt Klal Yisrael. And when the Chashmonoim defeated the Greeks v'nitzchum, they called this place called Kesri Achidas Migdal Shir, that we defeated the towers in which the Sorim, the leaders, were living in. Now the Gemara is going to bring another drasha about this place called Ekron. Omer B'yesi bar Chanina, Mai dichsiv. This that it says in the pasuk in Zechariah. The pasuk is referring to Tzur, which was one of the Chosheva places to Edom. The pasuk says, "V'hasiroisi domov mipiv v'shikutzov mibein shinov v'nishar gamhu leiloikeinu." And the Gemara explains, "V'hasiroisi domov mipiv." What does that mean? Zebeis bomaya, one of the main avodah zarah of Edom, Shelohem. V'shikutzov mibein shinov zebeis galio shelohen, the name of another leading avodah zarah of Edom. And Hashem would remove the names of these avodah zarah from the mouth and from between the lips of Edom. And from that point on, these names would not be names of chashivos, it would be names of gnai. V'nishar gamhu leiloikeinu elu botei knesiyos u'botei midrashos sheba Edom. The shuls and botei medrash that Klal Yisrael built in Edom, they were going to remain for Hashem. V'hoyo ka'aluf b'Yehuda ve'ekroin ki'yevusi. And the cities of Edom would become like Aluf b'Yehuda, and the place called Ekron would be similar to Yerushalayim, which was the place that the Yevusim lived in before Klal Yisrael conquered Eretz Yisrael. And what are they referring to? Elu tiratroyos v'kirkusois, the place where the Ovdei Avodah Zarah would gather, Sheba Edom, Shasidim Sari Yehuda Lelamid B'em Torah Barabim. Even though at first they were designated for Ovdei Avodah Zarah, at the time which the Nevuah in Zechariah is referring to, these places would be places where the Sari Yehuda would be learning and teaching Torah there in public. Now the Gemara is bringing another memra regarding this place called Ekron. Omer Rabbi Yitzchok, Leshem, the place called Leshem mentioned in Yeshua, Zu Pamios. This is referring to a place called Pamios. The mouth of the Jordan River is positioned there. Ve'ekron te'oker, the place called Ekron, mentioned in Tzfanya, Zu Kesari, Bas Edom. It's a place called Kesari, where the people of Edom are living. Shehi hoisa matrapoilin shel malachim. Matrapoilin is split into two words. There's matra, which means the mother, and poilin, which is a lashon of chashivus, which means it's the mother of melucha. Iked Amra, the Marabi Ba Malchi. Some say that this place was called Matrapoilin Shel Malachim because the Bnei Malachim used to grow up there. Ve'iked Amra, and some say the Moikmi Mino Malchi. They used to appoint kings from people that lived there. Continues Rabbi Yitzchok. Keisari of Yerushalayim, the two places, Keisari and Yerushalayim. Im yoymar lecha adam, if somebody tells you chorvu shneim, that both of them have become destroyed, al taimin, don't believe him. If somebody tells you yashvu shneim, that both of them are successfully populated, al tamin, don't believe them either. Chorva Keisari v'yashva Yerushalayim, if somebody tells you that Keisari has been destroyed and Yerushalayim is inhabited, or Chorva Yerushalayim, that Yerushalayim is destroyed, v'yashva Keisari, and Keisari is flourishing, Taimin, you can believe him, Shenemar, since it says in the Pasuk, Imolo ha'chorova. Tzair said about Yerushalayim, Tzair being Edom, that Imleazu chorvazu, v'imleazu chorvazu. And Tzair said in the Pasuk that I become full only on the back of another one's churban. What is that? That's Edom and Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim can only thrive when Edom is down, and Edom will only thrive when Yerushalayim is down. There will always be one of them will be chorev and the other one will be molek. Nachman bar Yitzchok says, Mehacha, is learnt out from a different pasuk. It says that when Rivka was carrying Yaakov and Esav, she was told La'oim mila'oim yemotz, that the two children, Yaakov and Esav, one of them will always be stronger than the other. When one goes up, the other one will go down. And we know that Esav is the head of Edom. Now the Gemara is going to bring another memra of Rabbi Yitzchok regarding Esav. V'amar Rabbi Yitzchok, Ma'idich Sivan, it says in the pasuk in Yeshaya, Yuchan Rosha Bal Lomad Tzedek. The pasuk says that Yuchan Rosha Bal Lomad Tzedek, and continues Be'eretz Nechoichos Ya'avil Ubal Yir'eh Geus Hashem. And Rabbi Yitzchok explains that this is referring to a discussion between Yitzchok Avinu and HaKadosh Baruch Hu regarding Esav. Omar Yitzchok lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yitzchok Avinu said to Hashem, Ribono shel olam, Yuchan Esav. Let's give Esav free matonos, matnas chinam, even though he doesn't deserve it. Omar Loi, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Yitzchok Avinu, Rashahu, he's a Rasha Gomer, he doesn't deserve a matnas chinam. Omar Loi, Yitzchok answered to Hashem, Bal Lomad Tzedek. Is there nobody that can be melamed olav schus? Omar Loi, so Hashem answers, Be'eretz nechoichos ya'avil. In the place where Klal Yisrael are going to be serving Hashem in a very straight fashion in Eretz Yisrael, Esav is going to come and destroy it. He's going to destroy Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim, and the Beis Hamikdash. Omar Loi, so Yitzchok said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Im Kain, if that's the case, Bal Yir'eh Geus Hashem, give him shefa in olam hazeh, in order that La'osid Lavoi, he should not have any zechus to be able to see the kavod of Hashem. Now the Gemara is going to bring another memra of Rabbi Yitzchok regarding Esav. V'omar Rabbi Yitzchok, Ma'idich Sib, it says in the pasuk in Tehillim, Al titein Hashem ma'avayei rosho, zmomoy al tofik yorumu selo. Says Rabbi Yitzchok as follows, Omar Yaakov lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yaakov said to Hashem, Ribono shel olam, Al titein le'esav harosho taivas liboy. Do not let my brother Esav succeed to do what his heart wants him to do. Zmomoy al tofik, and the ring in his nose, like the ring in the nose of an animal, which is there to guarantee that the animal gets led in the right path. Make sure it doesn't leave him. Make sure to keep Esav completely in control. Zu germamyo shel Edom. This is referring to a place called Germamyo shel Edom. She'ilmolei hein yoitzim, because when they go out to war, machrivin koloi lam kuloi, they are capable of destroying the whole world. And we know that Edom is associated to Esav. The Yavutz here, and the Hagoyes Hagra in Yom Daf Yud Aleph is actually Geirus, not Germamyo shel Edom, rather Germanyo shel Edom, which is Medinas Ashkenaz. And 2,000 years later, today, we understand exactly what this Gemara means. Continues the Gemara. The Gemara is now going to tell us to what extent Yaakov's tefillah was answered. V'omer Reb Chomer bar Chanina, says Reb Chomer bar Chanina, Tlas meo malchi ktirei toga. There were 300 kings. Ika beGermamyo shel Edom, in this place called Germamyo shel Edom. Utlas meo v'shitin v'chamisha marzavni, and there were 365 officials, Ika Baroimi, that are in Roimi. Ubechol Yoima Nafki Hani Le'api Hani. And every single day, they wage war with each other. B'chol yoyma nafki hani le'api hani. Umiktel chad minayu, and one of them dies. Umitardi la'oik mimalka. And because they're so busy fighting each other, and they're busy every day appointing a new king, that they do not have time to fight against Klal Yisrael. And Hashem did this consequent to Yaakov Avinu's tefillah, that Yaakov said to Hashem, don't let Germania shel Edom fight Klal Yisrael. The Gemara is now bringing another memra from Rabbi Yitzchok. V'omar Rabbi Yitzchok said, Rabbi Yitzchok, if somebody tells you, Yogati, I was miyagea in Torah, I toiled in Torah, v'lo motzasi, and I was not matzliach, al tamin, do not believe him. Lo yogati, if somebody says, I did not toil in Torah, umotzasi, and nonetheless I succeeded in finding Torah, al taimin, do not believe him. Yogati umotzasi, if somebody tells you, I toiled and was matzliach, I found Torah, taimin, believe him. Hanamili, this is all true, that success is dependent on toil, but divrei Torah, only regarding divrei Torah. Aval b'masa o maton, in business, success is not dependent in effort. Siyaitahu min shemaya, it's completely dependent on siyata deshmaya. Whatever was predestined to come your way will come your way, irrespective of the amount of effort you put in. Ule divrei Torah lo yamoron, and even regarding divrei Torah, we only say the rule that hatzlacha is dependent on yagia, elo lechadude, when it comes to a deeper understanding. But in order to remember and retain what one has learnt already, siyaita min shemayahi, that needs a special siyata deshmaya, and it could be that a person will do every ishtadlus to remember, and nonetheless he will suffer from forgetfulness on some level. And now the Gemara is bringing another memra of Rabbi Yitzchok. V'omar Rabbi Yitzchok says, Rabbi Yitzchok, Im ra'isot rosha shashom mesachekes loi. If you see a rosha that seems to be being very matzliach, al tizkore boy, don't fight with him, shenemar, since it says in the pasuk, al tischar b'mereim, don't challenge those who do evil. V'loi oid, and not only should you not challenge him, elo shedrachov matzlichim, you can assume that his drachim, his ways are going to be matzliach, shenemar, as it says regarding a rosha, yachilu drachov b'chol eis, it's possible that he will be matzliach all the time. V'loi oid, and not only that, elo shezoiche badin, that during his time of success, he'll be zeicha in the Beis Din Shel Maila. Shenemar, as it says in the Hemshech of that pasuk, morim mishpatecha minegdoi, that even the punishments that this Rasha deserves to get for his evil ways will not befall him. They will stand far away from him. V'lo and not only that, elo sheroyeh b'soinov, he will witness the defeat of his enemies. Shenemar, as it says in the Hemshech of that same pasuk, kol tzeirov yofiach bohem, he's going to manage to blow away his enemies. Asks the Gemara, Eini, is that really true that one should not challenge the Rishoim? V'omer Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, did Rabbi Yochanan not say in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, mutal is goris b'Rishoim b'olam hazeh, one is allowed to challenge the Rishoim in olam hazeh. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, oizvei Torah yehalelu Rasha, the people who are far from the Torah's ways, they are the ones that praise the Rishoim. The Shomrei Torah, and those who keep Torah, Yizgarubam, should challenge the Rishoim. V'tanya, and we learnt in the Brisa, Reb Dostoi bar Mostoin Omor, Reb Dostoi, the son of Moton, said, Mutal is goris b'Rishoim b'olam hazeh, one is allowed to challenge the Rishoim in olam hazeh. V'im lechoshcha odom loymar, if somebody is going to ask you that this seems to be contrary to a pasuk in Tehillim that says, Al tischar b'mereim v'al tekanei ba'oisei avla, do not fight against the Rishoim or those who do bad, that's not the pshat. Only misha liboi noikfoi oimer kein, somebody who's scared that his own averos are going to stand against him would make such a claim. Elo, what's really the pshat in the pasuk? Al tischar b'mereim means liyos kimereim. Don't be jealous. Don't compete with him and try and be like him, like the Rishoim. Al tekane ba'isei avla, and don't be jealous of those who are doing bad things. Liyos ka'isei avla, in order to be like them. V'oimer, and similarly there's a pasuk in Mishli that says, Al yekane libcho b'chatoim, don't be jealous of those who do averos. So how could Rabbi Yitzchok say that one is not allowed to be misgara with the Rishoim? Answers the Gemara, Loi kasha, it's not a kasha. Ha b'mili didei. For in Gashmias things, don't challenge a Rosha. Ha b'mili d'shmaya. But when it comes to Ruchnias and Kvod Shemaim and Kiyum Torah mitzvahs, you're allowed to challenge and fight with the Roshaim. The Gemara suggests another answer. Ha v'ha b'mili didei. Both Reb Shimon bar Yochai and Rabbi Yitzchok are referring to mili didei, even to his own private inyonim. V'loi kasha, it's not a stira. Ha b'tzadik gomor. Reb Shimon bar Yochai was referring to a tzadik gomor who is allowed to challenge the Roshaim, and he does not need to worry that the Rosha is going to fight him back. Ha b'tzadik she'enei gomor. Rabbi Yitzchok was referring to a tzadik who's not a tzadik gomor, and he should not challenge the Rosha, since the few averos that this tzaddik she'enei gomor may stand against him and will allow the Rosha to challenge him back. Doma Rav Huna, like Rav Huna said, Maidach Sivon, it says in a pasuk in Chabakuk, Lomo sabit boiktim tarchish bevala Rosha tzadik mimenu. Why does Hashem stay quiet when you see that a Rosha is hurting a tzaddik? And as if to ask, how can it be that a Rosha can hurt a tzaddik? The answer is, tzaddik mimenu boilea. If the tzaddik is only a tzaddik relative to the Rosha, but relative to another tzaddik, he's not such a tzaddik, then on such a type of tzaddik, the Rosha can overcome. But somebody who's a tzaddik gomor, somebody who's a tzaddik be'etzem, and not only relative to a Rosha, einoi beileh, the Rosha will not be able to hurt him. Another suggested answer to answer the stira between Rabbi Yitzchok and Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai as to whether one is allowed to challenge the Roshaim. The truth is that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai is right, that one is allowed to challenge the Roshaim. But if you see a Rosha that's having particularly siyata d'shmaya and success, that's when Rabbi Yitzchok says, don't chepper with him, don't challenge him, since his muzzle is standing for him, it could cause nezek even to a tzaddik gomor. Now the Gemara is going back to the sugya of Roimi that we discussed before. Oma Ula says Ula, Italia shel Yovon, the city called Italia, which is associated to Yovon, to Greece. Zukrach Godel shel Roimi. It's actually a big city belonging to the Malchus of Roimi. V'havyo tlas meo parsa al tlas meo parsa. It was 300 parsa by 300 parsa. V'yesh bo shloishmois shishim v'chamisha shvokim. There were 365 marketplaces, identical to the amount of days in a solar year. The smallest shuk was Shel Moichre Oifos, was where they would sell chickens. V'havya shisha asa mil al shisha asa mil. And that market, the smallest of all, was 16 mil by 16 mil. Umelech, and the king over them, Soyeid b'kol yoim, would feast every day, be'echad mehem, in one of the shvokim, one of the markets. V'hadorba, and somebody who lived in Italia shel Yavon, afal pi she'eino noiled ba, even though he wasn't born there, noitel pras mi beis hamelech. He was deserving of getting a food portion of a pras from the home of the melech. And somebody who was born there, afal pi she'eino darba, even though he does not live there, noitel pras mi beis hamelech, he also gets a pras from the beis hamelech. Ushloishes alofim beiboni yeshboy, and there are 3,000 bathing houses in this Italia shel Yavon. V'chamesh meis chaloinois malin osham chutz lechoima, and there were 500 exits for the smoke to leave the city, so that the walls of the town would not become black. Tzidei echod, one side of this krach godel, yom, is the sea. V'tzidei echod, on one side, horim ugvois, is mountains and valleys. V'tzidei echod, mechitza shel barzel, another side is a wall of iron. V'tzidei echod, chulsis. And the fourth side was chulsis umetzula, small stones and swamps. And that way this krach was protected on all its sides. Says the Mishnah, and this Mishnah is going to discuss in which Adar one practices Purim in the year where there are two Adars. Koru es ha-Megillah ba'Adar Rishon, if they read the Megillah in the first Adar, v'nis abra shana, and after the Purim, Beis Din decided to add on a second Adar, Keren oiso b'Adar Sheni, one reads the Megillah again in Adar Sheni, in the second Adar, and they were not yetzer with the reading of the first Adar. Says the Mishnah, Ein bein Adar HaRishon and Adar HaSheni, there's no difference between the two Adars, Elo kriyas ha-Megillah u'matonis levyenim. Only regarding Megillah and matonis levyenim, that they are only yetzer if one does it in Adar Sheni and not in Adar Rishon. But everything else, one is yetzer, one's chayv if one did it in Adar Rishon. And the Gemara explains this in more detail. Says the Gemara, Ho le'inyan seder parashiyos, zeh v'zeh shovim. Can we be medayik from the Mishnah that says that the only difference between Adar Rishon and Adar Sheni, the only halacha that one must do in the second Adar and one cannot do in the first Adar is Megillah with Matanos Levyonim. But as far as the parashas are concerned, Parashas Shkolim, Parashas Zocher, Parashas Porah and Parashas HaChodesh, Zeh v'zeh shovin. If one read it in Adar Rishon and then they decided to make an Adar Sheni, one does not need to read it again. Mani masnisin. If that's the case, according to which Tana is our Mishnah going to? Loi Tanakama, it's not like the Tanakama, V'loi Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yosi, and not Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yosi, V'loi Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, and not Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. And we're going to now see who and what this is referring to. The Tanya we saw in the Brisa, Koru es ha-Megillah ba'Adar Rishon, if they read the Megillah in Adar Rishon, V'nis Abra Shana, and then they were Ma'abir the Shana, they added a second Adar to the Shana, Korin oiso ba'Adar Sheni. One reads the Megillah again in Adar Sheni, Shekol mitzvahs shenegois b'sheni, negois b'rishon. All the mitzvahs that apply to Adar Sheni, if one did them in Adar Rishon, one is Yotza. Chutz Mikra Megillah, besides for Mikra Megillah. That's the opinion of the Tanakama. Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yosi says, Ein koirin oiso b'Adar Sheni, Shekol mitzvahs shenegois b'sheni, negois b'rishon. All the mitzvahs that apply to the second Adar also apply to the first Adar, and even Mikra Megillah, if one read it in the first Adar, one does not have to read it again in the second Adar. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Mishum Rabbi Yosi. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel said in the name of Rabbi Yosi, Af koirin oiso b'Adar Sheni. One does have to read again in Adar Sheni. Shekol mitzvah shenegois b'Adar Sheni, ein negois b'rishon. Since the mitzvahs that apply to the second Adar cannot be done in the first Adar, and that's why one has to do it again in the second Adar. V'shovin, all the three Tanoim agree that behesped ubetainis, that the Issa of Hesped and Tainus on the 14th and 15th of Adar, she'asurim bezeh or bezeh, it's osa, in Adar Rishon and in Adar Sheni. The Gemara asks, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, hayne Tanakama. It seems that Reb Shimon ben Gamliel is exactly the same opinion as the Tanakama. They both say that the Megillah has to be reread in Adar Sheni. Amar Rav Papa says, Rav Papa, no. Seder parashiyos ikar beinayu. The difference between them is regarding the Arba parashiyos we mentioned before. The Tanakama say, Lekatchila b'sheni, Lekatchila one should do it in the second Adar. V'i, Ovud b'rishon, Ovud, and if you did it in the first Adar, it's Yotza. Bar Mikra Megillah, besides for Megillah, the Afal Gav the Koru b'rishon, even though they read it in the first Adar, Kori b'sheni, you have to read it again in Adar Sheni. Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yosi Sova, Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yosi holds, Afilu Mikra Megillah, Lekatchila b'Adar Rishon, that even Lekatchila, one can read the Megillah in Adar Rishon. And who are in all the Arba parashiyos? Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Sava, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel holds, Afilu Seder parashiyos, even regarding the four parashiyos, Ikoru b'rishon, if they read them in the first Adar, Koru b'sheni, you have to read them again in the second Adar. And now the Gemara is coming back to our Mishnah. Mani, who does our Mishnah hold like? Tanakama. If it's the Tanakama, Kasha, Matonis. The Tanakama say, Chutz me Mikra Megillah. And our Mishnah says not only Mikra Megillah must be done in the second Adar, but Huadin Matonis Levyonim. If you're going to say that our Mishnah is Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yosi, Kasha Nami Mikra Megillah, then even Mikra Megillah is a Kasha, because Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yosi says that one can read the Megillah Lekatchila in Adar Rishon. And our Mishnah says that there has to be even B'diavad read in the second Adar. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, if our Mishnah is Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, Kasha Seder parashiyos. Our Mishnah says, like we saw in the Diuk at the beginning of this Gemara, that only Megillah Matanos Levyonim have to be done in the second Adar, but the four parashiyos don't. And this is contrary to the way the Gemara explains. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel answers the Gemara, La'olam Tanakama. The truth is our Mishnah is like the Tanakama. V'tana Mikra Megillah, and the Tanakama that said that the one halacha that it's ma'akav, that it's done in the second Adar, is Mikra Megillah and does not mention Matanos Levyonim, not like our Mishnah. Who are in Matanos Levyonim? That Tana actually means Megillah and Matanos Levyonim. Daha Baha Talia, because Matanos Levyonim and Mikra Megillah are dependent on each other. They must be done at the same time. Rabbeinu Chananel adds that this is a concept we saw in Daf Daled Amud Beis, that Eneim Sheleneim Nesua is the Mikra Megillah. V'Ibais Amos says the Gemara, I can answer the kasha differently. La'olam, it could be that our Mishnah, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, holds like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, and Reb Shimon ben Gamliel holds that even the Arba Parashiyos must be done in the second Adar. Umasnisin, in our Mishnah, Chasurim Mechsha, is missing a few words. V'achiktoni. And this is how you should understand the Mishnah. Ein bein arba also sheba adar rishon la'arba also sheba adar sheni, regarding the halachas of the 14th of Adar. Only Purim, not the whole month. Elo mikra Megillah matanos levyonim. That Megillah with matanos levyonim must be done in the second Adar, but the other mitzvahs of Purim itself, Sudas Purim, for example, if one did it in the first Adar, one is Yoitza. Ha le'inyan hesped v'tainis. But regarding hesped and tainis, everybody agrees that it's Asa in both Adars. V'ilu say the Parashiyos, and regarding the Arba Parashiyos, Loimari, the Mishnah wasn't talking about that. The Mishnah was only talking about the 14th of Adar. It was not talking about the whole month of Adar. And now the Gemara concludes, Omer B'chia bar Ovin, Omer Rabbi Yechanon, Hilchas Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, She'omar Meshum Rabbi Yosi. The halacha is, like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, that all the mitzvahs of Adar only apply to the second Adar and not to the first Adar, besides for the Issa of Hesped and Tainis. And now the Gemara is going to explain the Mekiros and the Svaris of the different Tanoim. Omer Rabbi Yechanon. Says Rabbi Yechanon, Ushneim, both Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yosi and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Mikra Echad Dorshu. They both learned their halachas from the same pasuk. It says in the pasuk, B'kol Shana v'Shana. There's a similarity between all the years. A year with one Adar and a year with two Adars. The question's just, in what aspect are they similar? Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yosi Sova, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yosi says, B'kol Shana Yishana, what has to be the same every year? Ma kol Shana v'Shana Adar HaSamuch L'Shvat, Afkan Adar HaSamuch L'Shvat. Every year Purim is done in the month following Shvat. So when there's one Adar, it's one Adar. When there's two Adars, it's Adar Rishon. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Sova, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, B'kol Shana v'Shana, Ma kol Shana v'Shana Adar HaSamuch L'Nisan, Afkan Adar HaSamuch L'Nisan. Every single year, Adar is practiced, Purim is practiced in the Adar, which is close to Chodesh Nisan. If there's one Adar, it's that one Adar. If there's two Adars, it's the second Adar. The Gemara continues. Bishleimer Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yosi, according to Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yosi, who says that it's always the Adar which is close to Chodesh Shvat, Mistaber Taima. We can understand that logically. De'ein mavirim ala mitzvahs. We know there's a klal with all mitzvahs that one should do them as soon as possible. One shouldn't abuse or let go of an opportunity of doing a mitzvah. And since the first Adar is the first Adar, it's the first time we could do the mitzvahs, so let's learn the pasuk of Kol Shana v'Shana and assume that it means the first Adar. El Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, my timer. Why does Reb Shimon ben Gamliel understand that Kol Shana v'Shana is assuming that it's the second Adar? Explains the Gemara Omer of Tavi, I'll tell you why. Time of Reb Shimon ben Gamliel is mismach geula legeula odif. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel preferred that the two geulos, the geula called Purim and the geula called Pesach, should be close to each other. There seems to be some kesher between them. Rashi in Tainis actually says on the Mishnah of Mishanichnas Adar Marbim Besimcha, Rashi says Yemei Nisim Hoyu Yisrael Purim uPesach. Now the Gemara gives another suggestion. Rabbi Elazar Omer, Taimad Reb Shimon ben Gamliel mehocha. The Mekiros of Reb Shimon ben Gamliel is from this pasuk. The Chsiv, it says in the pasuk, L'kayim es igeres hapurim hazois hashenis. From the fact that specific mention is made of the fact that this Purim, or the Igeres HaPurim, is a shenis, to hint to us that the halachas of Purim should be in a second Adar, in a year where there's two Adars. And since he had this remez in the pasuk, therefore he chose to understand that B'kol Shana or Shana is telling us that it's the second Adar, or the Adar close to Nisan. Asks the Gemara, why do I actually need to have both psukim, also the B'chol Shana v'Shana and also the pasuk of Igeres HaPurim Hazois HaShenis, v'itzrich lemichtav HaShenis, v'itzrich lemichtav B'chol Shana v'Shana. I need both of these psukim. De'imi B'kol Shana v'Shana, if it would only say B'kol Shana v'Shana, havya amina kukushyon, then you would ask that maybe because Shana V'Shana is referring to the first Adar because of the logic of Ein Mavir Nala Mitzvahs. Kumash Malon, Hashenis, that's why the word Hashenis is telling me, don't learn because Shana V'Shana meaning the first Adar, assume it means the second Adar. V'yesh minan Hashenis, if it would only say Hashenis and it would not say because Shana V'Shana, Hava min I would say that Batchila, Lekatchila, Berishain, Ubasheni, that one should keep all the mitzvahs in both Adars. Kumash Malon, that's why I need the pasuk because Shana V'Shana to say that all the years are similar, and in every year we don't ever practice Purim more than once. The question is just which one. And that's what Hashenis is saying is the second one. The Gemara explains, Rabbi Eliezer Bar Yesi, who says that the real Adar with Purim is the first one, Hai Hashenis my Ovidle. What's he going to do with the word Hashenis? Answers the Gemara, Shmuel Bar Yehuda. He needs it for the halach of Shmuel Bar Yehuda. The Omar of Shmuel Bar Yehuda, B'tchila Kavua B'Shushan. In the first letter, they instated Purim only in Shushan. Ulebesayf, when they sent the second letters, they changed that and they said B'kol olam kuloi that Purim would be practiced in the whole world.